Most of us are just 2 paychecks away from being homeless. Before, that saying sounded like an exaggeration. But in Germany, it is gradually becoming a reality. More than 1 million people currently do not have stable housing in the richest country in Europe. Some have to live in cramped temporary shelters. Some sleep in their cars. And tens of thousands of people are sleeping on the streets. What is shocking is that they are not unemployed people, not social evils, not criminals. They are just ordinary workers. The people who cook in restaurants, gardeners, hotel cleaners, delivery workers, elderly carers. During the day, they work like anyone else, but at night, they have to find a dark corner, a park bench, or a subway station to sleep. Are we witnessing multi-generational impoverishment, where a stable job is no longer a guarantee of a roof over one's head? Is the promise of dignity in the German constitution becoming a luxury? To understand where this story begins, we must look at a paradox that is becoming increasingly common on the streets of Berlin, Hamburg, and Munich. People who still go to work every day, but have no home to return to. For decades, Germany was built on a very simple promise. If you work hard, you will have a stable life, a roof over your head, a little peace of mind, a predictable future. But what happens when you keep working and that roof starts to feel distant? Let the actual numbers answer that question. According to some recent social reports, the number of people without stable housing in Germany has exceeded 1 million, the highest figure recorded in modern history. But what confuses many people is not just that number, but it's the emergence of a new group of people, those who are called by a seemingly contradictory name, working homeless. Homeless people, but still working, sounds unbelievable, right? A 4th-ranked economy in the world, where the German work ethic was once praised as the foundation that helped this country rise from the ashes after the World War. Yet now, it seems that very foundation is being tested. Because in a system that many have trusted for generations, hard work no longer always guarantees you a home. Look at Attila, a professional gardener. During the day, he meticulously tends to the lush green lawns of luxurious villas, but at night, his world shrinks to a wooden hut of less than 4 square meters. No electricity, no water. The only warmth in the Berlin winter is a small gas cylinder. Or the story of Denny, a chef with 12 years of experience in simmering bones and preparing exquisite feasts. When the company closed and family troubles struck, that man seemed to slip out of the welfare system in just a few short months. 2 out of thousands of lives, representing a common fate. How ironic it is that in a country that worships orderliness, these people have to learn how to arrange their entire lives into a sleeping bag to hide their poverty from their colleagues. They go to work on time, pay their taxes fully, but their efforts have almost become meaningless as rental prices in major cities have quietly surged by 70% over a decade. Perhaps the definition of prosperity needs to be rewritten when a skilled worker cannot even afford a 10 square meter room. Have we placed too much faith in the slogan, "Work hard for a stable life," only to realize it was just an extravagant promise? If a person works hard every day but still cannot afford a home, what is the true meaning of stability? If such questions make you think, you might consider subscribing to the channel. And to understand why stories like this seem to be appearing more and more in Germany, we need to look at a number that many social researchers call the first warning signal. We just talked about personal stories like Attila or Denny, but sometimes, to understand a social phenomenon, one has to look at the numbers, and there is a number that is starting to worry many social researchers in Germany: 1 million. According to the Federal Association of Social Work for the Homeless in Germany, by 2024, the number of people without stable housing had exceeded approximately 1.029 million. This number has increased very rapidly in just a few years. Around 607,000 people in 2022, then 928,000 people in 2023, and it continues to rise in the following year. Among them, it is estimated that around 56,000 people are sleeping directly on the streets. These numbers may surprise many people, But some experts believe that the reality is even more complex. Because many homeless people in Germany do not live on the streets. They live in temporary shelters, emergency hostels, or temporarily stay with friends. In other words, they are almost invisible in the daily life statistics of the city. But perhaps the more noteworthy aspect lies in a rather unique administrative mechanism of Germany. Something that sounds simple, but can determine whether you remain in the social system or not. It is called Meldeadress, the registration address. In Germany, almost everything starts with an address. You needed to open a bank account. You needed to register for health insurance. Needed to sign the official employment contract. Even to receive mail from government agencies. The problem is this: if you don't have a house, you usually don't have an address either. And when you don't have an address, the door to many basic services is almost closed. No bank account, no stable employment contract, sometimes even subjected to the highest tax rate due to not having an official residence address. Thus, a rather strange loop began to form. No house, so no address. No address, so it's hard to find a formal job. No stable job, so unable to rent a house. Some sociologists call it the catch-22 loop of homelessness, a system designed to manage social order, but sometimes inadvertently makes it harder to return to that order. Germany is known for its administrative machinery that is precise down to the smallest detail. Everything has forms, procedures, and stamps. But sometimes, if you have fallen out of that system, getting back in feels like trying to open a door with the key on the other side. How good a management system can it be if once you fall out of it, the path back becomes so long? Perhaps this is also why many people are starting to feel uneasy. Not because they are homeless, but because they realize the line between stability and instability can be more fragile than they ever thought. What do you think? Can a strict administrative system inadvertently create gaps for the vulnerable? Or are these just rare cases in a society that still functions well? If such questions make you think, you might consider subscribing to the channel to continue exploring stories like this with us. Because behind that 1 million figure, it seems there is an even bigger story unfolding. And it is related to something that most people need, but is becoming increasingly difficult to obtain: a roof over their heads. If the figure of 1 million homeless people shocks many, then the next question might be even more thought-provoking. What has caused a wealthy economy like Germany to fall into this situation? Part of the answer, according to many experts, lies in a rather quiet but very real battle. The battle to secure a roof over one's head. For many decades after World War II, Germany was considered the paradise for renters. The social housing system was built robustly, helping millions of working families live stably even with not very high incomes. In 1995, Germany had about 2.7 million social housing units, but according to some recent estimates, by 2025, this number will have dropped below 1 million units. Specifically in Berlin, the number of social housing units has decreased from about 340,000 to around 85,000. In other words, a safety net that was once quite thick seems to have significantly thinned out. During the same period, the real estate market took a completely different direction. House prices in many major cities have surged, even doubling over the past 2 decades. Many apartments that were once built for long-term living purposes have now become investment assets, being bought and sold on the global financial market. Housing, once considered a basic necessity, now seems to be operating according to the logic of the investment market. Some economists refer to this phenomenon with a rather cold term: financialization of housing. It sounds academic, but its meaning is quite simple. When housing becomes a type of profitable asset, the goal of maximizing profits can sometimes become more important than keeping housing always accessible. This creates quite a unique situation. Some real estate corporations currently manage hundreds of thousands of apartments. Meanwhile, many young workers in major cities have to share apartments with 3 or 4 people to reduce costs. Some Mittelstand businesses even report that they have difficulty hiring employees, not because of a lack of jobs, but because employees cannot find suitable housing. And then, a psychological shift began to occur. In the past, The German middle class was often seen as quite stable. But as housing prices continue to soar, some people are starting to feel that they are also standing closer to the edge than before. The European economy can produce luxury cars, complex industrial machines, and even lead in many fields of technology. But sometimes, the hardest thing to find is just an affordable apartment. So when housing becomes a global competition, can local workers still keep up with the game? And if even the middle class is starting to feel the pressure, is the social structure that Germany has built over decades quietly changing? If you want to continue exploring such questions with us, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss the next analyses. Because the housing crisis may not be the deepest layer of the story. Some researchers argue that behind it lies another loop, much quieter and more persistent. Poverty can last for many generations. There is a fairly common belief in modern society. If one generation faces difficulties, the next generation will have the opportunity to start anew. That is almost the core promise of many developed economies. You work hard, your children study well, and life gradually improves. But sometimes, reality is more complicated. According to an OECD study, in Germany, one of the strongest economies in Europe, it can take about 6 generations for the descendants of a poor family to reach the national average income. 6 generations. If simply calculated, that could be more than a century. While the average in many OECD countries is around 4 to 5 generations. This does not mean that everyone is stuck. But it suggests something worth considering. Social mobility, the path from poverty to stability, seems to be slowing down. To understand what that looks like in real life, take a look at an area in Berlin, Marzahn-Hellersdorf. This is one of the districts with lower income compared to many other areas of the capital. According to some social data, about 18.1% of the residents here are classified as being at risk of poverty. Meanwhile, about 14% of young people leave school without an official diploma. These numbers may sound dry, but behind them are everyday stories. Small apartments with multiple generations living together, children having to do homework in noisy living rooms, and parents struggling with ever-increasing living costs. When education is hard to access, when low income persists, and when housing becomes expensive, a cycle can form. It's not always clear, but it exists. A cycle in which each generation starts life with fewer choices than the previous one. Europe once built welfare systems with the hope that no one would be left behind. And in many cases, that system still helps a lot of people. But sometimes, the structures designed to protect society operate like an elevator, so slowly that many people begin to wonder if it is still moving at all. Charities like DARC are trying to support children in difficult areas. They provide meals, educational activities, and a safe environment for learning. But the demand for support seems to be increasing faster than the ability to meet it. And when looking at numbers like 6 generations, a question begins to emerge. If the path upward becomes so long, will faith in equal opportunity gradually fade? Because when it comes to poverty, sometimes the most haunting images are not found in economic reports, but right on the streets, where silent stories unfold every day. And that is exactly what we will look into in the next part. If you want to understand how a society is changing, sometimes you don't need to read hundreds of pages of economic reports. Just take a stroll around the city in the early morning. In Germany, there is a familiar sight at dawn. Elderly people quietly checking public trash bins, looking for plastic bottles or cans left over from the night before. Not because they love recycling, but because each such bottle has a deposit value of about 25 cents, thanks to Germany's famous fan system. This system has long been praised as one of the most efficient recycling models in Europe. And indeed, it has significantly helped reduce waste. But behind that environmental story, there is another reality that is rarely mentioned. According to some social estimates, around 980,000 people in Germany regularly collect bottles to earn extra income, and about 42% of them are women. Many people in this group are not unemployed youth, but retirees. Some people earn a few euros each day. Some earn less, usually under 4 euros. That amount is not enough to change a life. But sometimes it's enough to buy an extra loaf of bread or to cover the utility bills at the end of the month. There is a certain quietness in these images. Those who once worked for decades, contributing to the economy, now walk slowly along parks and train stations, searching for discarded plastic bottles. And then, when you look more closely at the urban space around them, you might start to notice another phenomenon. Many European cities, including Germany, have started adopting what is called hostile architecture. Park benches are divided into sections so that no one can lie down overnight. The surfaces under the awnings are designed to be rough. Some areas even have automatic water spraying systems at night. These designs are often interpreted as a way to maintain urban order, keeping public spaces clean and safe. But sometimes, if viewed from a different perspective, they can also carry a slightly different meaning. A city started designing benches so that people couldn't sleep on them, a rather subtle way to solve a problem by making that problem harder to see. Perhaps that's a kind of modern irony. We can design electric cars that run precisely to the minute, but sometimes we have to design park benches to ensure that no one sleeps on them. When looking at the stories in Germany, many people might wonder, is this a problem unique to one country, or does it reflect a broader trend occurring in many modern societies? In fact, homelessness is not only increasing in Germany. In recent years, reports in the United States, the United Kingdom, and France have also shown a similar trend. Housing costs are rising faster than incomes, while social support systems are under increasing pressure. Cities that were once seen as symbols of prosperity are now beginning to face more familiar images of tents, emergency housing, or makeshift camps. That raises the question for some researchers. Are modern cities entering a new phase where housing is becoming scarcer than ever? However, amidst that rather bleak picture, there is still an example often mentioned as another experiment. That is, Finland. For many years, this Nordic country has adopted a model that is quite simple, yet also quite different. Housing first. The idea of this model almost reverses the traditional approach. Instead of requiring homeless individuals to prove that they are already having a job, overcoming addiction, being mentally stable before being provided with housing, this program starts with a simpler step, providing a roof over their heads first. Then come other supports, such as psychological counseling, employment assistance, and social services. Sounds simple, but the results are quite remarkable. Over the course of more than a decade, the number of homeless people in Finland has significantly decreased, while many other countries have seen an upward trend. This does not mean that the model can be applied exactly the same everywhere. Each country has different economic structures, housing markets, and welfare systems. Germany, for example, has also begun experimenting with small-scale housing-first projects in some cities. But many experts believe that the lack of social housing makes widespread implementation more difficult. The German government currently has quite an ambitious goal: to end homelessness by 2030, a noteworthy goal. But some social researchers argue that the path to achieving that may not be simple. Should housing be considered a basic right, or still just a commodity on the market? The answer is probably not simple. Cities must balance investment, the market, and social needs. But when even the wealthiest economies in the world begin to face a housing crisis, one can't help but wonder, in which direction is the modern urban model heading? What do you think? If a society can produce the most advanced technologies, but more and more people are struggling to find a home, what does that say about our priorities? Perhaps Germany will not collapse in the way people usually imagine. And perhaps this is just a difficult phase for the housing market. It could also be a sign of deeper changes in the economic and social structure. But there is one thing that seems to be making many people think. The line between stability and instability might be thinner than we ever believed. So what do you think? Can a society maintain a sense of stability if more and more workers feel they are standing closer to the edge of insecurity than before? And in a world where housing is increasingly becoming a global investment asset, can cities still ensure a roof over the heads of those who operate them every day? If you find analyses like this useful, please like the video, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. Every small subscription helps us continue producing investigative content and deeper analyses of social issues shaping the modern world. This video is based on social reports, research data, and public sources. The content aims to provide an analytical perspective and stimulate discussion, not to attack any individual, organization, or country. Some data and opinions may change over time or differ depending on the research source. We encourage viewers to consult additional sources of information for a more comprehensive perspective.